Hey to the most amazing nurses. It is Dr. V here with Morning Infusion with Dr. V podcast, where we are intentional about teaching nurses how to work from anywhere around the world, making money and owning your own time, building profitable nurse coaching and consulting businesses. You will hear from amazing guests that have grown their companies and want to share insight into how you can do the same to change the face of healthcare as we know it. If you want to grow your businesses and leverage your knowledge as a nurse to grow wildly successful businesses at the top, instead of working your way to the top, head on over and join our Millionaire Nurse CEO group on Facebook, where you can ask questions and get updates on our live and virtual events to help you grow your businesses. So good morning. So this morning we have Sheila. All right, so Sheila, tell us who you are in your own words. Now, Sheila, listen, before we start, I need for you to like, comment, tell us what you like about the podcast and all of that. Now, Sheila, normally we're interviewing nurses, but Sheila is phenomenal. And so you need to hear her story. You need to hear who she is. And so that's the reason why we brought her on today. And so now, Sheila, tell us who you are.
Thank you so much, Dr. Viola. I'm honored to be on your podcast. I'm so glad we connected, and I'm looking forward to our conversation today. So I'm Sheila Phicil. I think of myself as a social change futurist. And what that means is I see possibilities in what we can do with technology to really help drive social change. And the area where I'm most passionate about and where I have the most experience is in healthcare. So I'm the founder of Facilitate Change, which is an advisory and AI solutions company that's really helping health tech entrepreneurs and innovators to create products that patients love and are solving real problems and do it in a way that is sustainable. So I've been on this journey for all of 5 months now, but I have over 15 years of experience in healthcare. I was trained in public health and financial economics, and I have run small teams, large teams, all kinds of different projects and initiatives in hospitals based here in Boston, some of the best in the world. And I've had a wonderful career solving problems and leading teams to solve problems. And I'm really bringing that expertise to folks who really want to change healthcare.
I love it. And one of the things that I want to say about the last 5 months, AI is something that's kind of new, kind of not. But at the same time, for you to integrate that with healthcare is genius. So I'm super excited about everything that you've got going on. So now tell me a little bit about you. So you grew up, you grew up in Orlando, but your family's originally from Haiti, correct? And so
Yes, my family's from Haiti.
tell me a little bit about growing up in a family from Haiti.
Yes. So my origin story, my mom arrived in the US 2 weeks before I was born.
Mm.
So she was fresh off the airplane when I arrived. So grew up in Orlando, Florida, where most of my family still lives. I was the oldest of 5 children. And for anyone who grows up as a first generation immigrant, you learn to live in two different worlds, right? At home, I'm speaking a different language, I'm eating different food, there's different norms in ways that we relate to the world. And then when I go to school or church, I lived in a completely different world, right? Including speaking a different language. So at a very young age, I learned the skill I describe as being a cultural broker. I mastered being myself at home, but I also had to master being myself in other spaces and being essentially that person that bridged that gap, whether it was serving as a translator for my parents as they were navigating life, including things like, doctor's visits or navigating their citizenship status. But also had this unusual upbringing in that, like, I also grew up in a lot of white spaces, going to private schools, and churches that were predominantly white. So I learned how to be in spaces where I was the only person that looked like me, and also where I had a lot of people that looked like me. And that really became the foundation of my character, personality, and how I see the world. And growing up in a also very diverse community in Orlando, Florida, where we were actually the part of Orlando where I grew up, Pine Hills, became majority minority in the 90s. So it was a true melting pot. You had Haitians, Dominicans, Filipino, Asian. We even had a deaf community. It was very interesting, mixed race children. So like the people that I grew up with, it was a very, very diverse community, and it really shaped how I see the world. And I've really taken those principles and those values with me throughout my career.
I love it. That reminds me, when you said translator, reminds me of the story, and it's such off topic, but it was the funniest thing. Well, it wasn't funny at the time. Okay. So we had this bus, that bus crashed like in the middle of our town. And so we're emergency, I was emergency room nurse for a long time, and they were all Haitian. Well, there's some people who speak Haitian, Creole Haitian, and some that don't speak Creole Haitian. And I was confused, and the translator was confused, and it was a whole hot mess. Now we finally got it together, but I was like, listen, I don't know what all this is about, but we need to figure this out. But anyway, let's get back to you. So now tell me, you developed a nonprofit where kids use dance to reach kids. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I had always been a child that was very curious about the world, and also challenged some of the norms that I saw. So growing up in the Haitian community, children were very much like not seen, not heard. You sat down and you behaved, and you did not have a role to play. But I would go in other spaces, in white spaces, and I would see how children were very much being engaged with, and they had opportunity to express themselves and be themselves. So I was like, well, why doesn't the Haitian community have this? And so I created this platform, and it started with actually, I got invited to co-host a children's radio show, radio, because this was in the 90s before like Facebook and everything else, where children would call in, and we'd like read Bible stories and ask questions, and they would get prizes. And I was 8 years old when I started doing that. And it just something that came very naturally to me. I think very much a natural storyteller, and loved engaging with people as well, particularly with youth. And then it really snowballed. I eventually was able to start my own independent radio show that led to a TV show as well. And then I started going to various community organizations and churches, and essentially like encouraging the development of youth's talent. So we started a dance team. We even had a community choir. And then once a year, I'd put on a talent show. And we would have children from all different churches, which is actually quite unheard of, because, as you know, like Protestants don't mess with Methodists, don't mess with Catholics, don't mess with Jehovah's Witness. But we actually brought many different faiths together, and the youth were able to just compete on stage, expressing their talent. And we had over 2,000 people show up at one of them. And it was really one of the formative experience of my youth, because I did that from the time I was 8 all the way until 20, when I left home and went to Boston for college. But also it exposed me to a lot of the challenges that the youth in our community were facing. For example, because I was very visible and the youth trusted me, they would share stories with me of how they were being abused, and often by their own family members, fathers, sexually abusing their daughters, and, deacons inappropriately touching children in the church. And so when I learned about these things, I really made it my job to speak out, and actually use my platform on my radio and television show to talk about these things. And it was quite taboo at the time, as you know. And I had also personally been a victim of this myself, although had never really shared my story. So, it really became a way to also shed light on some of what the things that were going on in the community, and the challenges that families were facing. But because this was an immigrant community, when I did bring these things up, there was often not resolution, because do you call the police if you risk deportation, for example, right? So those were some of the challenges that I had to also, face in doing that work.
It's very interesting to me how many people who have dealt with that. And it was interesting because my husband and I, whenever we go on long trips, we listen to books. And so we were listening to Michael Jordan's book. Okay. So now I live in North Carolina, right? So, Michael Jordan was big then. I mean, he's big to us, he's big to, everybody, right? And allegedly, in his book, he talked about the fact that his father, I'm not sure whether he wrote the book or someone else wrote the book, but, molested his older sister, right? And then allegedly, again, Joe Jackson, right? Michael Jackson's father. And it just amazes me the amount of people who have dealt with that. I remember, there was one time I actually was doing a job for my mom. Okay. And she was a nursing assistant. And I remember going to this house, and I was taking care of the wife, but the husband, like, he kept like rolling up on me, right? In my space. I'm 16. Listen, don't be rolling up in my space. Okay. Cause and so sure enough, I told my daddy that a couple of times, and I ain't never went back there again. We ain't gonna do, And so I think that's the importance of having someone that's strong in your family that can, help you to navigate those spaces. So now you also did some work with people with HIV/AIDS, during the time, right, that it was, very, very new, right? So tell me, what are your members from doing that work?
Yeah, so I have an interesting history with HIV and AIDS. As you know, growing up Haitian in the 90s, Haitians were often stigmatized as being the source of HIV and AIDS, right? Although that is not true.
They were attacking dogs here recently. I mean, the foolishness. But anyway, you go ahead.
Yes. So there's a history there. And then my first job, as I was at Boston University, completing my master's in public health, was part of a Center for Innovation and Social Work, working on a federally grant-funded project to really help address the gap in medication adherence, because at the time we now had medications, right, that could manage HIV and prevent it from turning into AIDS. But it was specifically focused on marginalized communities. So that was the term at the time of what we used to represent, like Black and Brown communities, for people that were dealing with homelessness or substance abuse, right? So what was interesting about that work is we started by talking to folks living with HIV who had actually mastered adherence and were taking the medication. And what we learned through many conversations, so my job was literally to ask questions, transcribe the responses, and then look for patterns across the conversations that we were having. We found that those who had a support system or peers, others who had the same lived experience as them, that they can then share their struggles and tips and strategies on how to maintain adherence to the medication, they were the ones that were more likely to adhere. And they had that better survival as well, right? So we took what we learned from the peers, turned it into a curriculum, and essentially now we're teaching community-based organizations how to train peers and embed them as part of the multidisciplinary care model. So you had like your doctors, your nurse, and a peer educator. And it was absolutely transformative. I got to experience firsthand people talk about the difference in their lives and how their lives were saved because they had someone who looked like them or shared their same experience who could help them navigate the medication journey, right? And that really was transformative for me because it just further reinforced this principle in me that, when we connect with people's stories and we allow them to be the expert of their own, health journey, you can really see significant results. And that's really is the source of innovation, is people's stories and honoring their lived experience.
I love that, Sheila. And that has just got to be so, so rewarding to have that happen. I love it. So we're going to go to commercial. And when we come back, we're going to talk about what led you into what you're doing now and the reason why you went to what you're doing now. Okay? All right. Here we go.
Sounds good.
I became a nurse because I wanted to help heal people, to make a meaningful impact in their lives.
I was immediately attracted to her confidence.
Absolutely phenomenal.
A full heart.
We just had a connection.
I spent 15 years in emergency nursing, and as I sat at the emergency desk one day, I began to see a pattern. While we cared deeply for our patients, we weren't always solving the bigger issues. We were working so hard, but many times we were only addressing symptoms, reacting to crisis, instead of preventing them. It wasn't anyone's fault, but the system wasn't designed to be proactive. And in the midst of it all, I saw nurses, amazing, compassionate nurses, completely drained. Nurses like you and me, exhausted, burned out, broken from the grind of giving everything and still feeling like it's never enough. Physically, emotionally, and financially, we were stretched to our limits. I saw it in my coworkers and I felt it in myself. That's when I realized my purpose, to create something that would support nurses, not just as caregivers, but as individuals with dreams, goals, and limitless potential.
She helped me through VP Nursing to get the systems in place to run my business to where I can be outside of my business, still have it successful, and spend more time with my family, do the things that matter.
I want to say thank you to VP for offering this opportunity to us as a community, and I look forward to her next event that's coming back in August.
I wanted to help nurses thrive, not just survive. I knew that the key to real change wasn't in climbing the corporate ladder or waiting for someone else to fix things. It was in giving nurses the tools to step in entrepreneurship, to create businesses that not only transform healthcare, but give them the freedom to live life on their own terms. My heart ached for nurses because I knew we deserved better. I wanted nurses to feel whole again, to have physical, emotional, mental, and financial freedom. And that's when I made the decision to stop waiting for the system to change and start creating something new. That's why I built the company. Our mission is to help 10,000 nurses reach 6 figures and 1,000 nurses to reach 7 figures.
I have to say that this conference was absolutely amazing. It was life-changing. And I'm looking forward to working with her. I'm looking forward to her coaching me to become a $1 million nurse CEO. The testimonials, the connections that we made, it's the community that I have been praying for. And I thank God for answering all my prayers.
It's been great. It's been overwhelmingly great.
This year, we're celebrating our first ever 7-figure nurse entrepreneur, and it's just the beginning. The Millionaire Nurse CEO Conference is your chance to step into that vision. It's not just a conference, it's a movement, a place where nurses come together to connect, to learn, to build businesses that align with their passion and purpose. If you've ever felt like there's more out there for you, this is the moment to take the leap. We can't wait to see you there.
So we're back. So Sheila,
Yes.
tell me now, we had this conversation. You were in this role and your boss had groomed you for this to take over her positioning. So tell us a little bit about that story, because let me tell you something. There is a lot of us who have this very same story. So go ahead.
Yes. So fast forward from, being a graduate student working on these interesting projects, I found my path in healthcare as an administrator, essentially working as a project manager. So I landed a role as a project manager as part of the Dana-Farber Brigham and Women's Cancer Center. And the woman that I reported to became a fantastic mentor to me and really helped stretch me and grow my skills and promoted me and was positioning me as her successor as an executive director in this very important role to the institution. So when the opportunity came and she announced that she was going to be retiring, I stepped forward and was essentially doing the work that she had been doing, leading meetings and strategy, problem solving, and all the things. And I even went as far as like updating my wardrobe. People say you got to dress the part. I was person that used to wear just like cardigans and I would sit in the background. I didn't need to be seen or heard. And I started wearing suits and, speaking up in meetings. And it was a bit of like, almost felt like a political campaign because this position reported to and had relationships with a lot of senior people in the health system. And so actually went to the chairs of various departments and I asked for their endorsement, essentially, to take on this role. And I asked them to write letters of support on my behalf, and they did that. I interviewed for the position while I was doing the job. And after a while, I was told that I did not get the role. And someone else was hired. And I did ask for feedback because I was very curious about, what could I have done differently? And the feedback that I got from the hiring manager was, I did not want this role to break you. And I remember just being confused, really, because my first thought was like, how do I show on my resume that I'm unbreakable? Like, what is the skill set there? And it devastated me, to say the least, because not only had I been groomed for the role, I was actively doing the job. And then the person who was hired into the role, a very kind human being, was leaning heavily on me to help them navigate the position. Now, I did get, a promotion into a director role and got some increased responsibilities, which really helped open the doors for the next step in my career. But I really vowed to myself from that point on that I would never leave my career and the next steps of my professional journey in anyone's hands. That I would make my path myself rather than trusting the process or trusting the system to take care of me.
That is so, when I think about that, right, I think about, how do you put it on your resume? And it really wasn't about that. At the end of the day, it was that there was somebody that they had pre-designed for that role and that they put somebody in that role that they needed to have in that role. But what happened a year later for that person?
So what's interesting is, within about 6 months, I was able to land a different opportunity, which led to, a great career transition. I say this all the time: rejection is redirection. Thank God. But this woman who had been hired for the position, she left 6 months after me, so was only in the role for about a year. And so I think it was very telling that this person didn't last in the role, and it was a challenging position.
She was breakable.
Well, I would. This is where I try to find. I think there's people who are coming into situations that they're not sure what they're getting themselves into. And I think this is what this was for her. And having been in the institution and grown up in it, I very much knew the challenges that the role was going to be presenting. So I was not surprised, to say the least, that this person moved on after that. So, but yeah, like I said, rejection is redirection. So what I learned from that experience, like I said, was like, I need to be the person that owns my career. I need to be the person to advocate for myself. And I took that into the next phase of my career, and it served me beautifully. It definitely was a lesson well learned, for sure.
I love it. And so you eventually, so kind of tell me about the transition between, and I think what you're saying is incredibly valuable. And I kind of want to start there because a lot of times what happens is we depend on other people to sort of validate us, number one. Number two, we depend on other people to make these choices for us, right? Especially whenever we're in organizations. And I was talking actually to my inner circle the other night, and we were talking about the number of jobs that we have applied for and that we have been turned down for. Right. And it is astronomical. It's ridiculous, the number of spaces that we have. And then I think about the 888-6, right? And how they went in and did what nobody else could do in much shorter time than it was designed for them to do it. And they thought that they were going to fail. But, you know, they always say that if you want to get it done, you want to get it done right. And you hire a Black woman, okay? Because she going to get it done. And so I really, really appreciate that. And because how you feel, one of the things that I didn't understand was that what I think shows up in my purse. It shows up in how much money I make, right? And so if you're not giving me the money that I make, then I need to make that on my own, and I need to make it happen on my own. And so there are times when you feel like you're struggling and you can't get past this and you can't do this. The reality is that at the end of the day, you are amazing. You have done all that you have done. And so now it's time for you to do it on your own. So tell us what that transition looked like for you when you became an entrepreneur.
So after leaving that role, I went to work at a different health system, and this was a very different experience for me. But I also, to your point, part of it was because I came in with a very different mindset. So I took on the role of director for a whole department, a neurology department at the largest essential hospital here in Boston. So I was the person responsible for the finances of the department, for hiring and onboarding physicians, for hiring, training, supervising staff from nurses and technicians, and overseeing our clinical research portfolio, you name it. We had an inpatient service, outpatient service, off-site location, and all of that was my responsibility. And when I was actually interviewing for the position and being offered a salary, and the initially salary that they gave me, I was not happy with. And so I declined. I said, you know what? I don't want the job. And then they met my salary. That's a very important strategy or tactic when it comes to negotiating your worth. You have to be willing to walk away if people are not going to pay you what you're worth. And went into the role, and I gave it everything I had. And 6 months into the job, COVID happened. So imagine coming into this job, you're building up a department that had lots of challenges, and then now we're dealing with a pandemic that the world has never seen before. And as I mentioned before, diversity and treating people equitably became something that I really wanted to ground my career in. So I was also trying to navigate that space in a very equitable way. One of the challenges that I faced was most of our frontline staff, like our front desk staff and others, were Black and brown folks. And most of our physicians were white, were Asian. And so when you talk about who gets to work from home, right, and having that protection of not being in a clinic space, I needed to make sure to navigate that equitably. But my efforts were recognized, and within a year, I was awarded a BMC Leadership Award at the hospital that I was working at, for my work on diversity and equity, and for actually also sharing my story and speaking out. At the time, of course, it was Black Lives Matter and George Floyd, so people were much more willing to listen. And that really opened the door for me to have conversations about what other opportunities that I really wanted in my career. And so I pitched to the COO at the hospital at the time, wanting to do work in innovation and health equity. So they created a position for me as Director of Innovation for Health Equity Accelerator. And I did that for 2 years. And that job was my dream job. I will say, hands down, I loved every second of that work, because I got to be an innovator, thinking about how do we design systems that really work for people? How do we use technology to do that? How do we partner with the community and our patients in this work? And it was one of the most fulfilling things that I got to do. And it really sparked that entrepreneurial fire and me wanting to see like how to do this better. Because obviously working within any institution, even with the best of intentions and all the resources, there are flaws, right? And I saw the restrictions and the some of just like the resource constraints and some of the environment not as conducive to the work that I wanted to do. And so that's when I decided to make the leap and become an entrepreneur. And I'll be honest, like making the decision was one of the hardest decisions of my life, because people that I really cared about and mentored me had advised me to keep my job, in fact, and said, it's better to have a job and a paycheck, even if you're, see potential for more or aren't happy with some of the politics you're seeing in the organization. And I decided to take the leap and trust in myself. Like I had to say, when am I going to invest in me? When am I going to trust in my skills? I have 15 years in the game. I've learned a lot. I've developed a lot of relationships. Let me give this a chance. I was like, you know what? I have 6 months of savings. Let's figure it out. And now here we are.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. I remember when I was taking the leap too, I was like, told my husband, I said, I'm gonna quit my job. And he was like, so you said, what now?
I mean, when the paychecks showing up on time every 2 weeks or once a month or whatever it is, it's a type of security. But it was interesting because someone
it's not a security. That's the thing.
That's the thing. And it took a friend very close to me when I was making the decision. I was like, do I stay or do I try this? And then she literally said to me, she's like, a job is a false sense of security because you can be fired.
Come on, come on, friend. Come on.
It seems like they can't fire you.
Right.
Yeah.
So yes, it's such a false sense of security, and I understand. But if you want to stay with what the 99% are doing, then go right ahead, right? But I'm interested in being the 1%, right? And so because of that, I'm just not interested in doing what everybody else has done. I'm interested in doing, following the lives of the people, everybody who is in the 1%, pretty much they own their own business. I mean, it's just what it is. So you just need to look at the success rate, look at what they're doing and just do it. People get jealous about people. They're like, well, they're doing like Beyonce. She's doing too much. No, Beyonce is not. Beyonce is doing what Beyonce needs to do. And Beyonce is making a buck. So you just need to learn from what she's doing. You cannot become what you hate. If you think she's doing too much, then she's doing too much. And then you will never become that because you think that that's not even a possibility of you. That is crazy to me. I have never understood that whole jealousy trap. But anyway, that's a whole another story for another day. So Sheila.
But the point you're also making, and Beyonce is an example of someone who is fully owns her creative energy.
Come on.
She has blazed trails and done things that people have never done before, and has also been financially rewarded for it. And everyone is capable of that. Everyone has a gift or talent or something that you can create and put out into this world. And it doesn't necessarily mean that every single person is designed to go and start their own business. They might be the person that comes along and builds something and grows something, right? And contributes their ideas and talents. I think ultimately it's about find your place in the world where you get to be yourself and you get paid to be yourself. Right? To bring your full self, your talents, your story, your passion to the table, rather than going up and going into a job where you don't feel honored and respected and valued. And more importantly, where the gifts inside of you lay dormant, right? Like this life is such a gift. We get to live it one time. Why would we ever shackle ourselves in situations when we can do something about it?
inside this box that we can't even get out of. But Beyonce said, if I want to sing country music, I'll sing country music. If I want to sing R&B, I'll sing R&B. If I want to dance on somebody's stage, I dance on somebody's stage. If I want to put on a Super Bowl show on December 25th, I can do that. I can do whatever I want to do. And she has done it. And like, people are like,
and that's ultimate freedom.
Listen, for me, that just shows me people gonna talk about you with it. If they ain't talking about me, they talk about somebody else. So, you know, I'm tough skinned enough for you to go ahead and talk about me. It's okay.
Yeah.
Right. So I love it. I love it. I love you, Sheila. I love everything that you're doing. Now tell the people where they can find you. Tell them about your services and then tell them where they can find you.
Yes. So at Facilitate Change, I offer advisory services for people who are in the health tech space. If you're an entrepreneur, an innovator who is creating a digital app, an AI solution, a device, a wearable, or a process to improve people's lives, I can really help you navigate that process. I have an innovation framework based on my years of experience in healthcare, how to actually design solutions that are based on people's experience. And if you go to my website, you will find the list of services. I also offer a quiz that you can take, and it'll help you navigate where you are in your process. And I'm also building an AI platform called Compass Project. Now, Compass Project is intended to be a blockchain and AI-enabled platform that will allow patients to directly engage in the process of designing healthcare solutions by telling their stories and sharing their data. And that's the stories and data will then be used to generate insights that can specifically tell entrepreneurs and innovators, here's how you design your products and solutions in a way that really meets patients' needs. You remember the example that I gave of talking to the patients that were living with HIV and collecting their story and like, well, what's working for you and why are you adhering to the medication and how are you able to keep taking the medication despite symptoms? It was just talking to people and getting their stories and their data. Now with AI, we can do that at scale. So through my platform, you can talk to hundreds, thousands of patients, get their perspective and their lived experience, and then get specific insights to really help you design solutions that people want. Because we have a lot of people in the health tech space that are designing solutions that are expensive and clunky and don't really serve people. And I really think it is an injustice to waste resources. So especially when there's so much need in healthcare and so much need for innovation in healthcare. So working with me will really help you accelerate your time to product market fit, connect with patients, find the segments that you can really make a difference in, and design solutions that are impactful and sustainable.
And let me tell you something. Let me explain to the people, okay? AI and tech, okay? AI and healthcare. $1 trillion businesses, okay? The reality is that if you can create something, you can tomorrow wake up and your life will forever be changed. So I encourage you to go out and look for Sheila because she can help you get there. So I ask that you like, share, comment on the podcast. Tell us what we're doing good. Tell us what we're doing bad. Just really follow Sheila because she is phenomenal. And then we'll go from there. Now, do you have anything else to share? With us? I do have something to share because when we first started talking, go ahead. Tell me what you want to share.
Well, I was going to say you can follow me on LinkedIn and on my website, subscribe to my newsletter where I'll share updates and tips and strategies. So definitely look for me on facilitatechange.com, and it's Phicil with a dash, facilitatechange.com.
I love it. So I just wanted, so when we were coming on, you were telling me that you travel to she said out the country, like, I'll travel out the state maybe, right? For every 3 months, right? He was like, I travel out the country every 3 months. And I was like, every 3 months. And I was like, what is that about? And then she told me, she said, I live very frugally. She said, you thrift your clothes. What else did you do frugally?
So I thrift. I share living space with a roommate, and I buy and make fresh food, so I'm not wasting food as well. So yeah, I try not to buy new things. I mend my clothes as well. So
But
yes,
then she
I'm
said
very
she'll
like
drop.
conscious about that.
But then she said she'll drop $5,000 on the trip. I was like, "That's my
Yes.
girl."
Yes. And honestly, very recently, this trip that I told you I traveled to Peru, I actually hired a travel agency. This is the first time I did that, and they planned everything. My hotels, my excursions, transportation. I had someone waiting for me at the airport with a sign with my name. And it was the best experience because I did not have to think about it. I did not have to stress myself out. Highly recommend it, take yourself on vacation. Do the things that like fill you up. And for me, travel is my form of adult play. And play is very therapeutic and healing for me.
Yeah, that's very good. Yeah, I always tell people all the time, I said, I like experiences. Like, my car's old, but the experience of travel is unmatched. So
It really
I'm
is.
glad we're gonna have to have conversations about how to do this whole travel thing every 3 months out of the country. All right, you ladies and gentlemen, you have an amazing rest of your day. We'll talk to y'all later.